any introductions.
Yeah, we are ready. Good evening. My name is Antara Patro, and I am a teacher of a senior secondary school in Kolkata. I welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of cross-culturalization of tribal communities in shaping the cultural uh, identity and ideology, curated under TMYS Review December 2024 in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are calling for the submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Dr. Radhika Borde, Ms. Haimanti Bagchi, Dr. Stella Chitralekha Biswas, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is professional training, augmenting economic opportunities for Indigenous women. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Dr. Radhika Borde. Dr. Radhika Borde is a lecturer in sustainability transitions and social justice at the School of Geography, University of Leeds. She is also a steering committee member of an International Union for Conservation of Nature (IUCN) specialist group on the cultural and spiritual values of protected areas and has helped develop a set of IUCN guidelines. She has a PhD from um, Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Radhika has worked as an activist and social entrepreneur in India. Her research is concerned with indigenous ecological movements, religion, and nature conservation, conservation of religious rights, traditional ecological knowledge, public health, and waste management. She has received several research grants. She is also a published author of short fiction and poetry. We are delighted to have you on the panel, Dr. Radhika. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our second speaker for the session is Ms. Haimanti Bagchi. Ms. Bagchi is a poet, artist, communication trainer, business storyteller, and independent researcher focused on creating awareness on indigenous culture, art, and literature. Her poems and short stories have been part of various anthologies and digital platforms. Her latest poetry collection is Autumn of Life, published by Authors Press. She is the co-owner of the Creative Farm based in Chennai, Art Lead and Art and Literary Community. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, Ms. Bagchi. Thank you for joining us today. Our third speaker for the session is Dr. Stella Chitralekha Biswas. Dr. Stella Chitralekha Biswas is an assistant professor in the Department of Literature, Language at SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. Previously, she taught UG and PG students at the Department of English, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata. She completed her PhD from the Center for Comparative Literature and Translation Studies, Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar. Her research interests include juvenile literature, pedagogy, speculative fiction, post-colonial studies, and sexuality and gender studies. She has presented and published papers on South Asian children's literature internationally. A very warm welcome to to you, Dr. Stella. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now we will open the forum for discussion. I would like to request Dr. Radhika Borde to share her insights over the topic. Ma'am, over to you.
So hello, everybody. It's really nice to get a chance to share my thoughts on such an interesting topic. I'm going to try and address some of the burning questions that you have in regard to this so that my intervention is a little bit targeted. I'm going to relate it to the research that I have done in India, more specifically in Jharkhand, where you have a very huge community of Adivasis. And Adivasis are understood and self-understand themselves to be the indigenous people of India, a claim which is in the process of being recognized or contested, depending on how you see it, by the government. So, what I feel is the crucial matter when we think about economic opportunities for Adivasi women or indigenous women is that indigenous societies in India are relatively less gendered than non indigenous societies. So, across India, and you can see this reflected in the country's performance in the Gender Equality Index, the Global Gender Equality Index, India is not a country where women are treated equally as compared to men. However, the situation is better amongst the indigenous communities in India, which have less restrictions on women working outside the home, less restrictions on how women are negotiating public spaces, negotiating their sexuality, negotiating interactions with men. And as a result, this creates more opportunities for women. It can also lead to indigenous women being more vulnerable because, unlike women from other communities, they are more visible in public spaces, therefore, more accessible to, for example, somebody who would be interested to exploit or prey on them. So, there are both these factors. However, since the socio-cultural restrictions on women's work outside the home is relatively less, you do see rather high participation Adivasi or indigenous women in the workforce. The question is this always an empowered participation or is it an exploited participation? So, is the labor of indigenous women being exploited or are indigenous women via their participation being empowered? And I think the question can be answered in relation to what kinds of labor participation are these indigenous women engaging in? How fairly is it being remunerated or compensated? Are they basically being used as a cheap labor force? So these are all these questions. So one of the ways in which this question can be answered is what kind of labor force participation? Is it that women are working as manual laborers? Is it that women are working as professionals, as white collar workers? And this is dependent on education. To a large extent, education, the access to education is dependent on socioeconomic backgrounds. So it really is a lot to do with the economic situation of the family that women are born into. It could also be whether the indigenous women in question can avail of various kinds of free educational opportunities that are being offered both by the Indian government and by various charitable organizations. So it's a question of access to these opportunities. So that's the first question. What kind of work are they doing? Is it work that pays well, white collar work, manual labor, etc.? But I don't think that is enough. I think that in order for indigenous women to really leverage on the strengths that being part of being an indigenous woman does give them, we have to examine, are indigenous women breaking cultural barriers in relation to their work? Are they working in gendered sectors? Or are they working in sectors that are traditionally gendered in the Indian context, but which are not gendered for them? So I'll give you an example. In Jharkhand, it's very common to see women working in the construction industry. So these are Adivasi women. So you will see them carrying construction materials, and it's mostly indigenous women who work in this way in this sector because women from other communities are not allowed to work in this sector. is not very well paid, but it is, in a sense, breaking a gender stereotype. What did happen in Jharkhand under the Swachh Bharat mission was the Jharkhand government faced a shortfall of trained masons to make toilets under the Swachh Bharat mission scheme. They didn't have enough masons. So they said, why not train these women who are anyway working in the construction center to work as masons? So they need to learn how to lay bricks, they need to learn how to, set cement, etc. And they gave them several training opportunities in this regard. And indeed, a lot of women, mostly indigenous women, took advantage of this training and they became trained masons. They faced a lot of backlash from not only non-indigenous communities but also indigenous communities for doing this work, um, primarily because it was understood that now they could work as masons, they were trained as masons, they could command higher income, and they would be competing with male masons. So they faced backlash from male masons. They also faced backlash from within their community because though the participation of indigenous women in this sector is allowed or even encouraged, there is a taboo amongst the Adivasi communities of Jharkhand that women can do all kinds of work, but there are specific tasks that they are not allowed to do. One of them is building the roof of a house. So this is a cultural taboo. So the idea is, yes, a woman can build a house, but she cannot build the roof because it's a taboo, which will have some consequences. There are some other taboos as well. Women can work in agriculture, but traditionally they're not allowed to plow, things of that kind. So there was backlash from both communities. However, women were trained as masons and they did work. And now, when people want to build a house or not necessarily a government funded construction, they do approach some of the female masons who are Adivasi women, so they are earning more. So when we talk of economic opportunities for women, I see that there are avenues like this. Of course, some of these avenues are going to come with access to education, which, as I described, is to do with socioeconomic, let's say, how strong a family is socioeconomically or how much access they have to education. But if we're talking about poor indigenous women in remote areas, I think the government can do a lot to look at the strengths within indigenous communities, to look at the ways in which they're not gendered, and then to sort of draw on these strengths and help indigenous women break barriers, which they are going to be in a better position to do than non-indigenous women. Because for them, for the non-indigenous women, working outside the home itself would be questioned, whereas for indigenous women, it is not so much of a question. So really, I think this is a kind of key area to look at the strengths among indigenous communities and to support indigenous women in leveraging those strengths. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really enlightening. These questions are there, but as a student of gender studies, I also had not thought this much. Thank you for sharing your observation. Now, I would request our next speaker, Ms. Haimanti Bagchi, to share her insights as well. Over to you.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank Coral ma'am and Saurabh sir to create such a platform where we are speaking about these crucial topics related to tribal economy, specifically the involvement of more often doubly marginalized tribal women. So thank you all of my fellow panelists and the project lead, and also to you Antara for having me here. So to begin with, I would like to give a few examples of how women have been acting as a major economic driver in some indigenous societies, not all, although, and hence they are an asset to their community. So one such example is Ima Kathel. So Ima Kathel is one of the indigenous markets in the world. Women are sole owners and traders of this market. The Ima Kathel, the word Ima, that refers mother, and Kathel, that refers to display. So it is also known as Khwai Ramban Bazaar by many people of Manipur, and is one of the indigenous markets in the world, which is very famous because only women are the traders over there. So the uniqueness of the market is because women are the sole owners and traders of this market, and it is the second largest women's market in Asia. So women of all age groups, mostly the middle aged women, used to come and sell their goods there, but um, because they needed financial support, and many young women also are nowadays seen in the market doing their business, and these women trade and deal with different types of products, ranging from daily wear needs and to the essential commodities of the society. So the market was established a little, historiography would add essence to it, so I am telling a little bit about its history. So the market was established in 16th century following the imposition of labor system. Lalup Kaba is which was in 1533. And what is this Lalup Kaba? This was basically a forced labor system in Manipur kingdom, which required male members of the Meitei community to work in distant lands or to serve. They went to serve the army basically. So, as a consequence of the system, the women were left alone and they needed support, financial support specifically. So, they did all the cultivation of the fields, they wove textiles because they were really good at it, and finally they needed to sell all of the products they grew and made. So they needed an improvised market where they would be able to sell all those. So improvised markets led to the formation of this organized imakatel, and finally was the permanent primary market in Manipur until the 20th century. So on the basis of all of these discussions and different field researches held over there, certain conclusions could be drawn. First, that the women vendors have very low profit margin. They mostly doom in debt, and they generally do not have saving accounts because they don't have the knowledge of banking system or financial literacy. So they take the business loans from private sectors, from the rich business, and most of the women are from very poor family, but this is their only major source of survival and livelihood. Another thing is that women vendors as a collective body always acts as a force on an issue concerning the socio-economic and political life of the people of the state. They always try to protect not only the interest of their own family but the state as a whole. Also, another thing, which is all women vendors of Ima market, they pay taxes for their seats. Even those who sell the things on the streets and those they are sitting under the shed, they all pay equal taxes. So, given the fact that they are not earning a lot, then they are paying taxes whenever they want to look. They are not getting it through the government organizations. So, based on this kind of situation, there is a scope of improvement of the condition of women vendors in Ima market, and also to promote such type of women market in another place in India. It's necessary that because it's a symbol of women empowerment, and most of the women take loans to start their business from private sectors, which government could initiate the financing and probably give them a little financial literacy so that they can manage things better on their own, and they can at least have a savings account where they can save their money for rainy days. And I would also like to talk about Gond tribal community and their lore, which shares an insight on how women they get widowed, because in tribal societies, or you can say in rural societies, women are mostly not doing jobs outside. They are um, in the household doing the household chores, and after their husband, in case he passes away, then they are widowed and they have no economic support. So Gond tribal community has this folklore, which suggests that this kind of economic rights and inheritance rights should not be taken away from the Gond women. So according to this legend, Raita Jango, who is a sister of Payandi Parikuparlingo, she was married to her husband when she was very young, and suddenly after the marriage, she was being bitten by the snake, and being widowed, she was asked, according to the community traditions, that her title should be Kankali. Now, Kankali means inauspicious, and she had to face a lot of ostracism. So she was unwilling to do that because she was a rebel at heart, and she declared that she was not responsible for her husband's death. She called a meeting of the elders and said that either they change the custom of branding the widowed women as inauspicious, or rather ask Gond men to acquire immortality so that women are not widowed. So, seeing the justice of her arguments, the elders formed new rules and allowing the widowed women to remarry. Now, the women were allowed to marry both within their deceased husband's clan and even outside it. So, however, if a woman is married outside the clan, the right to perform her last rites was always reserved for the clan of the first marriage, of which she was deemed a permanent member. So, in case the woman was past the marriageable age, or she doesn't want to get married again, she has this opportunity to declare a symbolic marriage with a small male child, mostly a grandchild, in the husband's family, and hence earning the right to live with the family and getting supported economically as well by the family is inbuilt in this particular legend. And that is why it is called that Gond women are never widowed. So this is one thing which really intrigued me, like how these lores have over time included their with time, because generations are going on, and there are changes in the socio-economic planes as well. So how these laws change accordingly, that is something which really interests me. So another aspect of this can be traced in matrilineal societies, Nair community. Inheritance customs are also similar. Also, if we speak about Madhubani paintings and the inheritance of art form and the tradition are by women from one generation to another. Here it is not only the economic inheritance but also the inheritance of their identities attached with Mithila and its the age old rich art and culture. So that is again the thing which gives them the economic rights on their creation, on their products, on their handicrafts. Thank you so much.
That was a great observation. And after the examples given by Dr. Radhika with you regarding the Adivasi and the Manipuri indigenous women, the question that comes to me is that although women are contributing, particularly these indigenous women, into economy, can we really say that they have that economical liberty? Um, I hope we will like loom deep into this question and try to figure it out. Now, I would request our third speaker, Dr. Stella, to share her thoughts as well on the topic. Over to you.
Very good evening to my esteemed panelists and the audience who are watching us live at the moment. It is an honor and privilege to have been invited on this platform and speak on a topic that is vital to the progress and prosperity of any nation in the world: professional training, augmenting economic opportunities for Indigenous women. The subject is not just about economic empowerment, but it is also at the same time about rectifying historical injustices, fostering inclusive growth, and unlocking the immense potential that resides within the Indigenous communities of India. As I'll focus specifically on the Indigenous communities of India, and I'll also share some instances where women have sort of tried to emerge victorious in their different enterprises. Indigenous women in India represent a rich tapestry of cultural diversity, tradition, and resilience. They often have been historically marginalized. They have faced numerous challenges such as limited access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. And these systematic barriers have perpetuated cycles of poverty and socioeconomic exclusion. However, fortunately enough, the winds of change are blowing, and professional training has emerged as a potent catalyst for transformation. So, professional training encompasses the development of specific skills that align with market demands, thereby enhancing employability and entrepreneurial potential. And therefore, for Indigenous women, such training is not just tool for economic upliftment; it is a gateway to self-reliance, dignity, and a better quality of life. We all, I think, would agree with the fact that professional training equips individuals with the technical, managerial, and soft skills that are required to thrive in today's competitive job market. And for Indigenous women, access to such training can unlock new economic opportunities, thereby enabling them to break free from the shackles of poverty and marginalization. And I would like to share a few examples of success stories from within India in this context. The first is the Lijjat Papar success story. And this is one of the most remarkable examples of professional training transforming the lives of Indigenous women. And this story is of the Shri Mahila Udyog Lijjat Papar. It was founded in 1959 by 7 women from Mumbai, and it began as a small cooperative aimed at producing papers, which are traditional Indian snacks. And the enterprise started with a loan of just rupees 80, but now it has grown into a multi-millionaire $1 million cooperative, employing over 45,000 women, many of whom are from tribal backgrounds. Now, the success of Lijjat Papar can be attributed to several factors, which include professional training in areas such as quality control, marketing, and management. This training has enabled women to maintain high standards, scale their production, and market their products effectively. And the cooperative model ensures that the products are equitably distributed among the members, thereby fostering a sense of ownership and economic empowerment. So we can, I think, very well agree with the fact that Lijjat Papar stands as a testament to the transformative power of professional training. It demonstrates how a small community-based initiative can evolve into a large-scale enterprise, creating substantial economic opportunities for Indigenous women. The next example is the impact of SEWA. The full form of SEWA is the Self-Employed Women's Association, which has been a beacon of hope for marginalized women across India. SEWA offers a range of professional training programs which are tailored to the needs of rural and tribal women in particular. These programs encompass diverse sectors such as agriculture, handicrafts, health, technology, etc., thereby empowering Indigenous women with the skills needed to thrive in various fields. And one of SEWA's notable initiatives is the RUDI, that is the Rural Distribution Network Project. RUDI trains women to become rural saleswomen, distributing locally produced goods such as grains, spices, and other essentials. This initiative not only enhances the income of the women involved, but also strengthens local economies by promoting the consumption of locally sourced products. Consider the story of Kamala, a woman from the Rabari tribe in Gujarat. Before joining Seva, Kamala struggled to make ends meet. But it is through Seva's training programs that she learned skills in marketing, inventory management, and financial literacy. Today, Kamla is a successful rural salesperson, earning a stable income and supporting her family. Her success has inspired other women in her community to pursue similar opportunities, thereby creating a ripple effect of empowerment. The third example is that of digital literacy and e-commerce in Jharkhand. So there are different tribal regions, of course, in Jharkhand, and the Jharkhand Tribal Development Society (JTDS) has been pioneering digital literary programs for Indigenous women. These programs focus on basic computer skills, internet usage, and e-commerce training, opening up new avenues for income generation. Again, I would like you to take the example of Meera, who is a woman from the Santhal tribe. With training from JTDS, Meera has learned to use a computer and navigate e-commerce platforms. She has started an online store selling handicrafted jewelry and textiles, leveraging the internet to reach customers beyond her village. Meera's business has flourished, providing her with a stable income and boosting the local economy. So the success of initiatives like these highlight the potential of digital literacy and e-commerce to create economic opportunities for Indigenous women. By connecting them to broader markets, these skills, of course, enable women to monetize their traditional crafts and knowledge, thereby preserving cultural heritage while also fostering economic growth. And the last example that I would share today is the Women's Weave Project, uh, which is in Madhya Pradesh and which is a very inspiring example in this regard. This initiative focuses on reviving traditional handloom weaving skills among Indigenous women, combining them with modern design and marketing techniques. So, through professional training, these women learn advanced weaving techniques, quality control, and business management. And this project also connects them with designers and markets in urban areas, enabling them to command better prices for their products. So, the success of the Women's Weave project illustrates how professional training, coupled with market linkages, can create sustainable livelihoods for Indigenous women while also preserving cultural heritage at the same time. And the impact of professional training extends far beyond individual success stories. When Indigenous women gain a proper economic independence and stability, they invest in their families and communities. They prioritize education for their children, improve their household health, and also contribute to local development. And this ripple effect fosters a cycle of growth and prosperity, thereby breaking the chains of poverty and marginalization. Despite the successes, significant challenges, of course, remain. Access to professional training programs can be limited by geographic isolation, cultural barriers, and financial constraints. And to address these challenges, a multifaceted approach is, of course, essential, some steps of which I would like to highlight categorically. The first step for this would be accessibility. So, training centers can be established in remote areas and mobile technology leveraged to reach women in isolated regions. For example, mobile training units can travel to remote villages, providing on the spot training and resources. The next step is cultural sensitivity. So, training programs that respect and incorporate local traditions and languages should be designed. Collaborating with local leaders and organizations can help in tailoring the programs to meet the specific needs and preferences of the community. The next step is that of financial support, of course, which is indispensable. So, scholarships, grants, and low interest loans should be provided to enable women to participate in training programs without any sort of financial burden. Additionally, partnerships with microfinance institutions can offer financial products tailored to the needs of Indigenous women entrepreneurs. The next step would be mentorship and networking. So, mentorship programs and networks can be established in order to connect Indigenous women with successful entrepreneurs and professionals. These connections can provide guidance, support, and opportunities for collaboration. And the last step would be that of policy support. So, policies that promote the inclusion of Indigenous women in economic activities should be advocated. Governments and institutions must prioritize funding and support for initiatives that are aimed at training and empowering these women. In today's digital age, technology, of course, plays a crucial role in bridging gaps and creating opportunities. So, online platforms and mobile applications can facilitate access to training, resources, market information, and financial services. For example, e learning platforms can offer courses in local languages, thereby covering a wide range of skills from basic literacy to advanced technical training. Moreover, digital platforms can connect Indigenous women to markets and customers worldwide, thereby enabling them to sell their products and services beyond their immediate geographic areas. Social media and e commerce platforms can amplify their reach, helping them build brand identities and customer bases. So, I would like to conclude with a call to action. The economic empowerment of Indigenous women through professional training is not just a moral imperative, but a strategy that is necessary for our nation's growth and for the growth of any other nation for that matter. By investing in their skills and potential, we are laying the foundation for a more inclusive, prosperous, and equitable society. The stories of success that I've shared today are not isolated incidents. They're harbingers of a broader movement towards empowerment and inclusion. However, much work remains to be done, and therefore it is incumbent upon us all, from governments to NGOs, businesses, and individuals, to support and scale these initiatives. And we must all try to champion the cause of professional training for Indigenous women in every way possible, recognizing their invaluable contributions and ensuring that they have the opportunities that they deserve. And together we can create a future where every woman, regardless of their background, has the chance to thrive and lead. Thank you. It's a connectivity issue. I don't know us end.
Yeah. So should we just start discussing amongst us in just in case Antara needs some time? So I just like to thank my fellow
Absolutely.
speakers, really insightful and interesting comments and observations. I really liked your stories, and we presented together a kind of rich tapestry of like problems and also opportunities that are available in relation to how do we kind of, in India, make the most of the fact that Indigenous women are A, more able to participate in the labor sector, B, are more in need of education and training. So there are sort of like these pushes and pulls in this regard. I think that was really good. Thank you for your observations. And let's wait for Antara's problems to resolve. Um,
Yes.
Indeed, I think this was a very good beginning for the session, and it actually gave a platform to understand what we are actually speaking about, and the topic is really crucial at this point of time. I was really excited to speak about this.
And also sharing a platform with Radhika ma'am, I think, is a privilege and a golden
Absolutely,
opportunity for us, especially early career
absolutely.
scholars like us who are
Mm,
not really specialists in the area, but we got to learn a lot from you. To actually question
absolutely.
certain things within the larger ambit of these economic opportunities that Indigenous women have access to, and whether they actually have that kind of independence or not. Sort of look at the binaries and the
thank
fractures.
There are
it
so
was
many
really
layers actually uh, to
Absolutely.
understand this in a better way. Yeah. Yes, Radhika
Yeah.
ma'am, you were saying something.
No, no, no. I was just sort of saying thank you for this, and thank you also for your comments. It's really interesting to hear your stories. I think it's such an interesting topic because not just because Indigenous women need opportunities, but because they present a very different way of participating in society and the world at large. Just because Indigenous societies are different. So I think that if they are kind of fully enabled to participate in the way that they can, it's not only beneficial for them, but they would kind of showcase a new way of women participating in the world or in the workforce.
So it appears Antara might take a while to rejoin us. And since I was a part of this project from the very beginning, I was the project lead for this particular project. So I do have the set of questions with me. So maybe I'll take it up while she sort of tries to rejoin. So the first question is for Dr. Radhika Borde. What are the long-term goals of various professional programs for the economic empowerment of Indigenous women? Could you share your thoughts on this, as one of the co-leads of Remaking Places interdisciplinary network, which addresses the challenge of mass social inequality?
Right. So thank you for that question. I have a very critical take on this. So I'm going to present a critical take. My view is that various countries, such as India, countries in the global south, or the global majority countries, have a view of including women in the workforce when it comes to workforce that is involving manual labor. We have a view which is not perhaps entirely empowering for the inclusion of women. So, this is my critical perspective. I see that in many development sectors, the government of India, the governments are trying very hard to get rural women involved. So they are, recruiting women as, let's say in Jharkhand, they are called Swast Sahiya. So they're Ashas, people who work in community health, or they are recruiting women, for example, for the Swachh Bharat mission. So these like really big governmental programs, yeah, in relation to health, in relation to sanitation, in relation to agriculture as well. So they are really trying to recruit a lot of rural women, and in many cases, uh, the major kind of participation in these recruitment drives comes from indigenous communities. So indigenous women are, getting recruited, but are they being compensated fairly? Is the first question, and the answer is no. And one cannot say that they are not being compensated fairly because it is simply impossible to pay so many people uh, in the planning that goes into the financial planning that goes into all these government schemes. There is an inbuilt understanding that women will not need to be paid that much. They'll be satisfied with like a small wage, so we can really get more work from them for less. So I would call it an exploitative model of kind of drawing women into the workforce, especially when it comes to this kind of public sector workforce. And I think this is a big problem. And it's a very tricky problem because it has many layers. So the first layer is I think the government of India should have an explicit objective that no participation of women in any kind of grassroots level public sector work should occur unless the empowerment of those women is the primary objective. So the problem is, for example, with the Swachh Bharat mission, there would be some discussion. We will get a lot of toilets built. We will involve women. They will be cheaper. They will do the work. There's also this kind of discussion, less likely to be corrupt. And yes, they will get empowered in the process. But I think that the reasoning should be, completely different. It should be, are we going to empower these women by getting them involved or not? And if the answer is no, then the reasoning should be then we don't have the right to involve them in this particular project. So I think that is extremely important, and that is what is going to create social justice. Otherwise, you just simply have the exploitation of a labor force which is willing to work, which is able to work. You don't have real inclusion of this labor force. So that's one thing. The second thing is I am also a little bit critical of professional opportunities that are gendering work. So the idea that, oh, let's involve women like in, childcare services at the rural level. Let's involve women in, services that fall within the traditional space within which women are kind of seen as legitimately acting. I think that is also a problem. I think there should be always that kind of thinking that are we transforming gender relations by including women in this sector, or are we reinforcing stereotypes? So if this kind of inclusion of women in this kind of work is just going to reinforce stereotypes that, oh yes, women are the people who are like involved with, water and cleaning the house, so let's get them involved in the Swachh Bharat mission, that is reinforcing the stereotype that this is women's work and this is not men's work. So I think that barrier, this barrier as to what constitutes men's work and women's work should always be kept in mind when really big entities such as governments, who have the capacity to change these stereotypes, to break down these barriers, when they are trying to include women in the workforce and they are training women professionally to be included in the workforce. So these two things, one is fair financial compensation, and the other thing is, are you breaking down stereotypes or are you reinforcing stereotypes? Thank you.
So, Antara, you're back.
Sorry.
I had taken over during your absence. Okay, she
Okay,
disappeared
she's
altogether.
again gone.
Thank you for sharing your answers, ma'am. I think those were some really thought-provoking ideas that you shared, and we would need some time to sit back and reflect upon them at length. So my
Welcome.
next question is for Ms. Bagchi, Ms. Haimanti Bagchi. So you are always gathering and sharing your valuable insights through social media on the tribal cultures by capturing their art forms, tattoos, and other forms of livelihood. So from your own experience, what are some infrastructural developments, example training centers, online platforms, etc., necessary to ensure that professional training programs are comprehensive to Indigenous women?
Okay, I think this question is really important when we are speaking about professional development, or building infrastructure to develop the indigenous women and supporting them economically. So the Indian government launched National Skill Development Mission in 2015, and with the aim of upskilling and reskilling almost 300 million people by 2022. The 2015 National Policy on Skill Development and Entrepreneurship seeks to enhance the employability of the disadvantaged groups, including women, scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, and people with disability. So, under this policy, several non governmental organizations and private institutions receive government fundings for training programs in rural and indigenous areas. So, however, there are limited research on indigenous women's experiences per se with these programs in India. To fill this gap, let us discuss the programs implemented for indigenous women and explore what are their experiences of indigenous women with the skill development program. How, if at all, implemented training corresponds to their requirement, their aspirations as being indigenous. So a skill policy intended for general population made up of more than 400 different indigenous group. We are in India the second largest indigenous population, and these groups have many differences in culture, customs, history, language, and the way of living. So indigenous people are either Adivasi or Mool Nivasi, although Indian government officially uses the term tribal or scheduled tribes to refer the indigenous people in policy documents. But the concept of tribe was a colonial invention and represented as ideology intended to categorize conquered people and integrate to the imperial system. So, in the recent times, neoliberal and land policies and national capitalist development policies have promoted constructions like dams, roads, industries, agribusiness, plantations, and mines of ores, and etc. So, these projects have displaced over 10 million indigenous people, depriving them from their land and their livelihood due to the systematic opening up of indigenous territories through development activities. The indigenous people of India have lost their customary rights over the natural resources, which was also their sustainable source of income. For example, the water, the land, the forest. So they are compelled to move to cities to find new livelihoods. All over the world, the struggle of indigenous people for their rights is recognized as a long term process involving cultural, linguistic, and psychological divesting of colonial power. So, the effect of colonization and neoliberalism on the education of indigenous groups is documented. So, the indigenous people face many barriers to access the learning system. These barriers include westernized curriculum or the use of dominant teaching methodologies and language, the attitude of the teachers or trainers, and the assessment strategies. So, we need to ponder on certain aspects to understand it in a better way. First, that what about the indigenous knowledge? Are we using it? The focus on external skills instead of preserving the indigenous knowledge and their skills is clearly visible in our educational policies and training patterns. For sure, their indigenous knowledge has not been utilized in their sustainability. Rather, they are forced to learn something which uh, seems to be something which is out of their comfort zone or out of their interest area most of the times. Also, what about their preference for livelihoods in the indigenous areas? Why do they have to get displaced? Why do they have to move to cities? Why is there an inclination towards only traditional sort of training and not innovative methods which can both preserve their indigeneity and economic development? Here, I would like to share an example. Um, Two examples basically. One is by Airbnb. There was a which was launched in association with Princess Divya Kumara Foundation, and they were supporting the Rajasthani rural women by marketing local handicrafts, providing them hospitality training, digital literacy training. Similar initiative of Airbnb was which was called Hum Sab Ek initiative, which works to give a unique and immersive experience of a village, an ancient village of Pheang in Leh Ladakh. So, through extended partnership, Airbnb would be training indigenous communities on home sharing, hospitality, quality standards, and responsible hosting practices. I also have a video regarding this, but then at the end, probably if time permits, I would be showing it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Dr. Stella, for stepping up. I was having some network issue, and sorry for the inconvenience. I would now like to put a question for Dr. Stella. My question for you is that How do these programs, particularly these professional programs, address potential social impacts such as changing gender roles within the community?
Professional training programs, particularly for Indigenous women in India, significantly shift traditional gender roles within their communities. These programs empower women with new skills and economic opportunities, thereby enabling them to step beyond domestic confines. So, as these women begin contributing financially, they gain greater influence in household decision making, fostering more equitable family dynamics. Programs like SEVA or JTDS that I just discussed a while ago incorporate gender sensitization, promoting gender equality and challenging traditional norms. So, women who become successful entrepreneurs or skilled workers serve as role models, thereby demonstrating the feasibility and benefits of balancing professional and domestic responsibilities. Furthermore, these programs encourage community wide acceptance of gender role changes. As families witness the advantages of women's economic participation, they increasingly support the education and professional aspirations of their daughters. So this creates a ripple effect, progressively reshaping gender roles and promoting a more inclusive and equitable community structure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stella. Uh, as we are very close to the end, so would Miss Hoimonti like to share the video right now?
Sure. Let me present. Let me know if it is visible.
Not yet. Yeah, it's
I feel
clear.
extremely
The
proud
screen
of
is
that.
clear.
We have almost 44 million people coming every year to visit Jaipur, and now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. My family, of course, has done a lot to keep the heritage, the culture, all of that alive even now. I feel extremely proud of that.
The Princess Diya Kumari Foundation was founded to help underprivileged women in Rajasthan. Over the last 6 years, we've trained over 500 women. We have 4 centers, and one is in the old walled city of Jaipur at Badal Mahal. Our main goal is really to empower these women to reduce the gender inequality that they face in their communities, and also skill building and
That was interesting, but we lost Miss Hoimonti. Should we wait?
She's back in.
So, Haimanti, you're on mute. Would you like to kind of summarize your video since we have something like 2 minutes left? And
Sure.
thank you very much.
So
We
it's
enjoyed.
it was basically that initiative which I was just speaking about, Divya Kumari Foundation with Airbnb. So they had collaborated, and they not only promote the marketing part of their, like the women do handicrafts and stuff like that. So they not only provide the marketing platform, they also train them into digital literacy so that they can promote it digitally, uh, promote their work, promote their spaces where they live. So they have this village homes where they provide opportunity for for Airbnb to rent it out for particular days, and they are getting the whole hospitality training. So that is something which is empowering them. On one hand, they are also not getting involved into something which is really not aligned with them. And plus they are also integrating their cultural heritage, their art and handicrafts, and to the people, to the whole world actually. So that seemed really interesting to me.
That was really interesting, and we are ending on this note. With that, we come to an end to tonight's discussion. I thank each one of you for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with us. I'm sure our audience had a wonderful time and have learned a lot as well. We are grateful to you all for taking out time from your busy schedules and for being a part of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have been in your company this evening. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions of cross-culturalization of tribal communities, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Bye.
having us. Thank you for the lovely conversation, Dr. Borde
Thank
and Ms. Bagchi.
It was really nice. It was really nice to
Same
meet
here.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella.
Bye.
Thank you, Antara.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.